So, Shireen Abu Akleh, she's a Palestinian American, or she was a Palestinian American journalist who'd been working for the last 20 years uncovering the atrocities happening in Palestine, and abuses against the Palestinian people. Last week, she was shot in the face and killed by a sniper, while she was covering some some events that were going on in Palestine. She was with three other journalists at the time who've all said that she was murdered by an Israeli sniper. Um, that she was working for Al Jazeera with her colleagues. I don't know if people have seen the footage of the funeral, where the heavily armed Israeli forces were jostling, attacking the people carrying the coffin, touching the coffin. I don't see what business they'd have to have been grabbing and touching at the coffin. That seemed unnecessary. And then today I've seen that there's been footage released of, I think it must have been about 30 ridiculously heavily armed occupation forces storming into the hospital where Shireen's body was laying, literally running and storming into the hospital with big guns. I cannot for the life of me think why that would be a necessary thing to do. Um, so it's caused a huge amount of upset. The way that it's been reported in the Western media has caused some further upset. Because that it was reported in a very neutral way by some outlets in this country. I think the BBC reported, that she'd been killed, and repeated, I think, the lines from the Israeli government saying that she might have been killed by Palestinian. I don't know. They didn't say terrorists, but they suggested it wasn't them, but it might have been Palestinians that killed her. Which is outright denied by the colleagues that were with her, and they've advised that they had told the authorities they were going in there. They were experienced journalists. They wouldn't go into a situation like that, where they could have got involved in that kind of crossfire. It was absolutely the Israeli sniper. They're saying.
I mean, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, has really got very upset about what they call the biased reporting of this by Western news sources. They say that they've been over-egging the degree of violence in Jenin, which is where it's all started. That the reason they got involved in the funeral was because they'd agreed with the Palestinian authorities that they could have a funeral, but that the coffin would travel in a car and not be carried down the street, and that it wouldn't be draped with a Palestinian flag. And that's why they attacked it, to take the flag off. Sort of there is. I've heard as well the thing about the suggestion that it's a Palestinian gunman. I agree with you. It's absolute nonsense. But the Palestinians have the bullet and won't hand it over for analysis because they say they don't trust the Israelis to do the right thing by it. I mean, do you think that we're in danger in the West of over-egging the anti-Israeli comments, that we're in danger of underestimating the degree of Palestinian overestimating the degree of Palestinians sort of suffering in this? I mean, what's your comment about those claims by Haaretz?
Oh, well, I've seen the word clashes used again, and this constantly comes up in situations where there have been abuses against Palestinian people, clashes. And in this situation and many others, when you watch the video footage, an armed policeman with a baton bashing someone carrying a coffin, that's not a clash for me. That's police brutality. And I don't understand. She was a Palestinian lady. I don't understand why it was fair to say that she could have a Palestinian flag on her coffin. Perhaps I'm ignorant of certain facts and I'm not appreciating the full situation, but to me that doesn't sound like an unfair request.
I'm so sorry, everybody. Oh, Jane, we lost you
I'm
there.
back. Oh my gosh,
Sort of,
sorry.
you were halfway through a sentence. Can you finish that off?
It came through, John. It came through
It is
yours.
my internet connection, which is the problem. Sort of, I
Ah.
mean, just to back up what Jane was saying there, sort of, one of the things that outraged me was the description of what happened in Gaza last year as a war between Gaza and Israel. And sort of, yeah, Gaza fought bravely by sitting there while the Israelis dropped bombs from aeroplanes. The and just one other thing is. The Israel have been accused of systematic targeting of journalists, haven't they, Jane? 144 journalists wounded or killed since 2018. I mean, do you think that's the case?
I mean, I do. They've been well publicised, these cases. I mean, the pictures of Shireen show that she was very clearly wearing the press clothing. It was very obvious that she was a member of the press, and she'd informed them she was going to be there with her colleagues. There's been a lot of other cases where, photo evidence has shown it's very clear that people were pressed. There couldn't have been an easy mistake made. And in what other country in the world, in what other civilized country in the world does this happen, that journalists accidentally get shot to that extent?
Thank you very much, Jane. An awful lot of comments agreeing with you. I think it's black and white. Stuart, the White House has condemned this. Let's go back to the Ellie Green's statement right at the beginning. The White House has condemned, but they don't do anything. What do you reckon to US action on this issue? Are they backing off when they should be stepping in?
I think it's an interesting change to the kind of behaviours that we got from the US under Donald Trump and his government. Certainly, they were very supportive with regards to the Israeli government in most cases. I think what at the moment no other nation is really doing more than a strongly worded letter, and I don't foresee that any nation's going to take that big leap and do anything further, which is incredibly sad. That we can't secure any form of justice for this at the moment.
I read an article in the Guardian which said that there's a group called AIPAC or AIPAC, who are funding pro-Israeli Republicans, sort of to the tune of millions of dollars in elections. I mean, do you think that the Republicans in America are compromised by this kind of behaviour?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly anyone who's taken donations of any form are compromised on their votes, whether it's donations from housing providers in the UK, nation states making strong donations to Republicans in America.
Thank you. I mean, this is interference in elections, isn't it? And when Russia do it, everybody's up in arms. Neil Terry, yes, they did bomb the Al Jazeera building in Bethlehem, but they claimed that it was a terrorist headquarters. I mean, we don't bother with truth nowadays, Neil. We just say something. I want to pick up here now, though, Jacqueline Hemming's comment. I don't see why the establishment media insist on continuing with this narrative that the Israeli-Palestinian situation is a clash of equals. Paul, there was a really good article by Arva Mardawi in the Guardian where she talked about Schrodinger's Palestine. And she said that sort of when we're talking about the state of Palestine and a Palestinian nation, it doesn't exist. Nobody pays any consequence to it at all. It doesn't exist. As soon as we start talking about terrorism, Palestinians exist very much. Palestinians are only terrorists, but they don't exist when it comes. So they're endangering the peace on one half, but we can't possibly create a peace on the other because that we don't take them into account at all. And Jacqueline Hemmings is absolutely on the same page as that. Are you on the same page as that? Do you think that we have here a massive clash of unequals?
Absolutely. You think about, like, people talk a lot. You get a lot of people who complain about people being cancelled. You've got a whole nation that was genuinely cancelled. Like, so this week we've had people coming out with their articles in mainstream media saying, "Oh, I've been cancelled. It's terrible. Look at what's happened to me. Here are my millions of Twitter followers. Tell them all that, they haven't been cancelled in the slightest." You've got a country that used to exist and then now it doesn't exist. And even based upon the agreements, it should have still partially existed, even though, Palestine used to be a state where there were Jewish people, where there were Christian people, where there were Muslim people, all living, all allowed to live. And then they created another nation right on top of it called Israel, and kept parts of it Palestinian, but Israel have over time taken more and more of that land. That country has been cancelled. It isn't even recognised as a state by other countries. Like, you can't. This is absolutely appalling. There are Palestinians who have their homes taken from them by people who come from the other side of the world, have maybe moved out of Brooklyn and have been promised a place in Israel, and they'll kick people out of their homes in order to home someone from, like, the opposite side of the world. They are second-class citizens in the place that they live. Or they're not even second-class, they're the lowest possible class. They are treated inhumanly. And you've got Amnesty International and the UN. The UN aren't exactly like this left-wing organisation, and they've condemned it, and they've said it's an apartheid state. Israel's an apartheid state. Now, if we aren't going to recognise that and deal with it, then what are we doing? What's the point? The UN are saying it. Ireland have said it. Lots of nations have said it. Israel is an apartheid state. But you say it in this country, and it's problematic. And, oh, no, you can't say that because it's anti-Semitic. Of course it's not anti-Semitic. It's nothing to do with their Jewishness that makes them behave in this way. It's nothing to do with Judaism. It's not Judaism that's telling them to behave in this way towards the Palestinian people. There are Jews who live all around the world, peacefully, lovely, they're just the same as everyone else. There will be lovely people and there will be not so lovely people. It's nothing to do with that. It's anti-Semitic to say that it's anti-Semitic to complain about the actions of Israel. So I think we need to start really calling this out. I think we've given them far too much leeway. And I think, if you think about all the things they've done, I'm just going to read a list of names out. This is from Loki. The Israel occupation killed Shireen Abu Akleh, but it also killed Yasser Mutaja, Ahmed Abu Hussein, Basil Faraj, Fadel Shana, Imad Abu Zara, Assam Tilawi, James Miller, Khalid Riyad Hamed, Mahmoud Al-Kumi, and Nazi Darwaze. All wore clothing identifying themselves as press. All of them. That's a list of names. I don't know when that's from. That's relatively recent, though. So, there is no excuse for this, and there is no excuse for attacking the coffin. This is appalling behaviour. This is inhuman behaviour. If we were seeing this elsewhere, we would be absolutely furious, and I hope that we start to change our reaction and actually try to do something about this.
Keep the red flag flying here.